Oh, but my heart is in Havana. There's something about his manners. Havana, no. He didn't walk up with that, how you doing? When he came in, he said there's a lot of girls I can do it, but I can't win.
Hello and welcome to Rice-Eccles Stadium here in Salt Lake City. I am Matt Smith for Mile High Sports. Thank you very much for tuning in. Well, folks, it's finally over. The 2017 Colorado football season has drawn to a close as the Buffaloes wrap up overall 5-7 and 2-7 in Pac-12 Conference. Following a 2016 campaign where they won the Pac-12 South and at 10 wins went worst to first, in the Pac-12 South they go last, first, right back to last, and a very disappointing finish for the Colorado Buffaloes football team, who many, including myself, expected to make their way back to a bowl game this season. However, self-inflicted mistakes, the list of issues, we can talk about it. The inability to protect the quarterback for the majority of this season, the inability to cause turnovers when they needed, the inability to pressure the quarterback when they needed, and I think the most glaring issue was the inability to stop the run in 2017. That was really an issue for the Buffaloes. And tonight for Colorado is more the same. Zack Moss with 190 yards on the ground for Utah, 2 touchdowns, an impressive performance from this Utah running game. We thought, okay, maybe this is a team who's going to get some time away from football, refocused, recenter themselves, and come out and compete with quite a bit on the line here, being that I guess it would have been the first time in 14 years that they would have made back-to-back bowl games. Of course, they fall short of that, and tonight the Buffaloes now head home back to Boulder, very disappointed. This one certainly didn't play out the way that they had hoped, and it was pretty much from Jump Street. Utah would take a 28-0 lead in this game, and pretty much the Buffs were buried. I mean, from every aspect in this game, the Buffs couldn't execute really when it mattered. Buffs lose 34-13. Colorado again gives up over 300 yards on the ground, and that's got to be one of the most frustrating aspects of this 2017 season for fans, is that the Buffaloes' rush defense compared to what we saw last season, obviously losing 10 regular contributors defensively, it shifted. I mean, this team was getting contributions from guys that had been on this roster for a little while but hadn't played a ton of snaps. And this year, a lot of learning experiences. And we heard that in the postgame from Phil Lindsay, from George Frazier, from Isaiah Oliver. This team had a lot of young players, young talent on it, but a lot of guys who would get to go through the fire and see it for themselves. That was one of the things that they had last season, was pretty much any loss that you could ever take in college football. 2016's senior class had taken it, and they really learned from it. And this year, like Phil Lindsay said after the game, there's a lot of guys in that locker room who had a lot of learning to do this year, and we can only hope that that is something that was accomplished in 2017, because looking back on it, not a ton of bright spots for a team that was expected by most to win between 6 and 8 games falls short. Before this season, I thought 7-5, and I thought anything short of that would be a disappointment. They had more than enough talent on offense, but really the self-inflicted mistakes, shooting yourself in the foot in the wrong moments, it felt like a sinking ship and you couldn't plug every single hole. But honestly, you know, you also have to look at the fact that the Buffaloes only had 2 Power 5 wins this season. 3-0 to start 2017, and then a real rough start to conference play, but a team that was in pretty much every game except for really the Washington State game and tonight's contest as well, in my opinion at least. This one, they, I guess, statistically had a chance to come back at the end, but it really didn't feel like that if you watch this game. A good crowd tonight here in Salt Lake City, and certainly a team that came out and from a physical standpoint really dominated Colorado, and that was something that we saw continuously in 2017. It's something that has to get better, and I think that moving forward into this offseason, things are not going to look the same in 2018. This is a coaching staff that really needs to look itself in the mirror, evaluate, and make some changes. There are some situations that would take place that would drastically change what this team looks like in 2018. However, we'll have to get there. We'll deal with those if and when we get there. Coach McIntyre after the game saying that his message to the team after the game was, we're going to get back to work Monday morning. Obviously, with that early signing day moving up, coaches are going to be recruiting much earlier than they normally would this season, and of course, without a bowl game to prepare for. Mike McIntyre saying that this coaching staff is going to get back out on the road pretty much tomorrow night after they get to Boulder. Very disappointing end, and certainly the end of a career for one of the all-time CU greats in Phil Lindsay. He did have a touchdown tonight. He and Steven Montez, the lone touchdowns on the ground for the Buffaloes this evening, but certainly an incredible career from Phil Lindsay. Phil pretty much symbolizing what it means to be a Colorado Buffalo. I asked him after the game what's next for him. He said getting back to work and getting ready for the NFL. And the knock on Phil is obviously going to be his size, but listen, I can tell you, standing a whopping 5'8" myself, it's not the size of the dog, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Phil Lindsay certainly is going to have an interesting shot at that, and we're going to see how things develop. There are a few pros on this team. Jeremy Irwin is another guy that sticks out. We also spoke with Isaiah Oliver after the game tonight, and he is a guy that has been rumored and has popped up on pretty much every NFL draft board as either a first to third round pick in the NFL draft. Isaiah actually having some interesting comments that the decision whether or not to run track in the spring will certainly play into his decision making for the upcoming draft if he decides to return or not. He said he's done a really good job this season of not even paying attention to any of that stuff. But if I had to guess, I'd imagine Isaiah's out of here. When you're rumored to be a first-round pick, that's not something that you just pass up. You don't pass up those millions of dollars. I would expect Isaiah Oliver to be gone next season. It's certainly going to be interesting to see what that Colorado offensive line looks like next season with 3 seniors graduating: Jeremy Irwin, Jared Coe, Jonathan Huckins gone. And of course, the receiving core that Athlon Sports had preseason ranked the 3rd in the country. Obviously, tons of concern there with that group this season, but the returning talent you have to be extremely happy about. Kabion Ento, redshirting this season, may be one of the best playmakers on this team, and he didn't even play a snap this season. Juwan Winfrey showed us what he could do, certainly against USC, over 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, and tonight he played a lot in favor of Shea Fields. We're not sure whether or not Shea was 100% from that, coming back from that concussion that he suffered against USC, but Juwan would certainly figure to be a big factor into 2018's team. And of course, Laviska Shenault and KD Nixon showed some really good things this season, and I would expect those 2 guys to play a very large role. And you can't rule out Jay McIntyre as well, who's going to be a senior next season. J-Mac could be in for a very productive 2018 campaign. It's going to be a very interesting few weeks here for the Colorado Buffaloes and this coaching staff. I can tell you that much. It certainly has been another interesting season of Colorado football, not the way that we thought this one was going to play out, but intriguing nonetheless, and tons of storylines to get into as we prepare for spring practices and, of course, the 2018 season, and just what might this team look like heading into next year. I am Matt Smith here from Salt Lake City at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Thank you for tuning in, as you have all season long, to Mile High Sports and our Buffs coverage, and pretty much everything we do on Mile High Sports. There's a Buffs game at 2 p.m. tomorrow for the 5-0 Colorado basketball team against Air Force at the Coors Event Center. I have a 5 a.m. flight to catch, so I can be there for that one. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.